Last lesson, we talked about how to set up a chessboard. Today, we are learning about the movement of the chess pieces. Chess is a complex game because each piece moves differently, but don't worry, by the end of this lesson, you will have a clear understanding of how to move each piece. Let's start with the king. The king can move to any square that touches his own. This means he can move one square left, right, up, down, or diagonally. The queen is an extremely powerful piece because she moves just like the king, except she does not have a one square limit. This means she can move as many spaces as she wants, left, right, up, down, or diagonal. Although the queen can move an unlimited number of spaces, she must stop once she hits an opponent's piece. This means the queen can have opposing pieces at the end, but not in the middle of her path. Now let's practice what we just learned. Look at the king. Which of the following paths are possible moves? In this situation, the red path and green path are multiple squares. Remember that the king can only move one square in any direction. That is why the blue path is the only correct option. Now let's look at where the queen can move. Take the next 15 seconds to look at each possible path. Now talk to your neighbors. Do your answers match? In this situation, while the queen can move multiple squares in any direction, she can only move until she reaches another piece. That is why the blue path is wrong and the green and red paths are correct. Taking a closer look at the green path, the queen would capture the opponent's piece and she would now be in that position. As you learned last week, each player starts with two bishops. A bishop can only move diagonally. It can move an unlimited number of squares diagonally forwards or backwards. Because of the way the bishop moves, it can only ever be on the same color space that it started on. Each player also has two rooks. The rook can move an unlimited number of spaces, left, right, up, or down. Now let's practice with the rook. In this example, what are the possible paths that the rook can take? If you chose the red path, then you are correct. The blue path is wrong because the rook cannot move diagonally. The green path is wrong because once the rook hits an opponent's piece, it cannot move any further. Now let's practice with the bishop. In this example, what are the possible paths of the bishop? If you chose the green path, then you're correct. The red path is wrong because the bishop cannot move forward. The blue path is wrong because once a bishop hits an opponent's piece, it cannot move any further. The final two pieces have the most complex movements. The knight moves in the shape of an L. He can move up 2 spaces and over 1 to the right or over 1 to the left. Or he can move down 2 spaces and over 1 to the right or over 1 to the left. He can move left 2 spaces and up or down 1 space. He can also move right 2 spaces and up or down 1. Unlike all the other chess pieces, the knight can jump over opposing pieces. Now let's try a few examples with the knight. Which of the given paths are correct? Take the next 15 seconds to look it over. The blue and green paths shown are correct. The red path is wrong because the knight cannot only move forward. It must move in an L shape. The pawn is unique in chess because he can move in 3 different ways. The first way is that the pawn can move 1 space up if there is not an opposing piece directly in front of him. The second way is that from the pawn's original starting position, it can move up 1 or 2 spaces. Remember, this is only allowed in the original row. The final way a pawn can move is at a diagonal. If an opposing piece is 1 space diagonal from the pawn can move to that space and take the opposing piece. For all of these moves, the pawn can only move forwards. Now let's try a few examples with the pawn. Where can he move? Which of the paths given for the light pawn are correct? If you chose the blue path, then you are correct. The green path is wrong because the pawn cannot move backwards. The red path is wrong because the pawn can only move 2 squares on that piece's first move of the game. Now let's try another example with the pawn. Which of the following paths for the dark pawn are correct? In this example, the red path is correct. The blue path is incorrect because the pawn can only move diagonal if it is capturing an opponent's piece. The green path is wrong because it is moving forward 2 spaces onto an opponent's piece, which is illegal. Now you've learned the proper movements for all the chess pieces. As a summary, the king can move to any square that touches his own. The queen can move an unlimited number of spaces straight or diagonally, but she cannot jump over other pieces. The bishop moves an unlimited number of spaces diagonally and also cannot jump over other pieces. The rook can only move in straight lines and cannot jump over other pieces. The knight moves in the shape of an L, straight 2 spaces and over 1 space. The knight can jump over other pieces. The pawn can only move forward. It can move forward 1 space if that space is empty, or diagonally 1 if an opposing piece is in that space. If the pawn is in its original position, it can move forward 1 or 2 spaces, as long as there are no other pieces in those spots. Now that you know how to move all the chess pieces, let's practice on a worksheet.